Dear students, we will continue with the periodontal flap surgeries for pocket treatment. Last class we have seen about the pocket reduction procedures. Today we will see about the pocket elimination procedures. So we'll go on to pocket elimination procedure. The first procedure is original Widman flap. This is one of the first detailed described procedure by Leonard Widman in 1918. He described a mucoperiosteal flap designed aimed at removing the pocket epithelium and the inflamed connective tissue, thereby facilitating optimal cleaning of the root surface. Widman pointed out the importance of placing the soft tissue margin at the level of alveolar bone so that no pockets would remain. The surgical procedures result in exposure of some amount of root surface, and often the interproximal areas were left without soft tissue coverage and the alveolar bone get exposed. So the difference between modified Widman and Widman is the Widman is a pocket elimination procedure where it tends to remove or eliminate the pocket and place the gingival margin after the surgery at the level of the bone. Whereas in modified Widman, the flaps are not mobilized. The idea is not to move the flap to the base of the bone, but it is the idea of modified Widman is only to remove the debris and granulation tissue from the pocket wall. That is the main idea of modified Widman, whereas Widman tends to remove the pocket entirely. So the advantage of this procedure over gingivectomy procedure according to Widman is that when we do gingivectomy, there will be an open wound which heals by secondary intention, whereas with Widman's flap there will be less discomfort for the patient since healing occurs by the primary intention, and that it was possible to re-establish a proper contour of the alveolar bone inside with angular bone defect, because we are going to expose the bone and do osseous surgeries or recontouring of the bone will be done after the flap exposure in Widman's flap. So coming on to the procedure, so the original Widman flap, there will be a vertical releasing incision given and there will be an internal bevel incision given, but the internal bevel incision is not pointed towards the crest of the alveolar bone here in Widman's flap. The Widman's flap, the internal bevel incision is pointed more towards apically to the crest of alveolar bone, and the flap is raised, the wedge of tissue is removed, and the bone recontouring is done. If the bone contour is not in a physiological contour, the bone recontouring will be done and the flap is placed back and sutured. That's the difference between your modified Widman and Widman's flap. So the next flap will be undisplaced flap or excisional flap or internal bevel gingivectomy. This is the most commonly performed type of periodontal surgery. The difference from the modified Widman flap is that the soft tissue pocket wall is removed with the initial incision itself. Thus, it may be considered as internal bevel gingivectomy. The undisplaced flap and the gingivectomy are the two procedural techniques that surgically removes the pocket wall. To perform this technique without creating a mucogingival problem, it should be determined that enough attached gingiva will remain after removal of the pocket wall. Right. So the undisplaced flap, you can see the picture, the difference between the incisions in the modified Widman flap and the undisplaced flap. Modified Widman flap, usually the internal bevel incision is given 0.5 to 1 millimeter from the gingival margin and pointed towards the crest of the alveolar bone, whereas in undisplaced flap the incision is placed coronal to the base of the pocket and it's pointed apical to the crest of the alveolar bone. So that is the difference between modified Widman and undisplaced flap, whereas undisplaced flap is going to completely remove the pocket with the first incision itself. So going on to the procedures, the pockets are measured with a periodontal probe or a pocket marker. The initial or internal bevel incision is made after the scalloping or bleeding marks on the gingiva. The incision is usually carried at a point apical to the alveolar crest. Depending on the thickness of the tissue, the thicker the tissue, the more apical will be the ending of your incision. In addition, thinning of the flap should be done with the initial incision itself. The second incision will be the clavicular incision, which is made from the bottom of the pocket to the bone to detach the connective tissue from the bone. So the step 4 will be the flap reflection with the periosteal elevator from the internal bevel incision. Usually there is no need for vertical incision because the flap is not usually displaced. The third or the internal interdental incision is made with an interdental knife separating the connective tissue from the bone. The triangular wedge of tissue is removed. The area is debrided. Remove all tissue tags and granulation tissue. After the necessary scaling and root planing, the flap should rest at the root bone junction. A continuous link suture is used to secure the facial and lingual palatal flap. So it is basically a pocket elimination procedure where the flap will rest at the root and bone junction, so there will not be any pocket left out. So this is a picture of an undisplaced flap. You can see the internal bevel incision which is given on the palatal aspect. It is way more apical to the gingival margin. After the placement of the flap, you can see the first picture and the last picture, the difference, the amount of recession created after the surgery because of the undisplaced flap. So the next flap is apically positioned flap or displaced flap. In 1929, Nordberg was the first one to advocate this technique, and in 1962, Friedman proposed the term apically repositioned flap. The Friedman emphasized the fact that at the end of the surgical procedure, the entire complex of the soft tissue rather than the gingiva alone was displaced. In undisplaced flap, we are going to give an internal bevel incision so that we are going to thin out the flap. So the gingiva is excised and the flap is thinned out, whereas in apically repositioned flap, we are not going to thin out the flap. We are going to take a full thickness flap from the sulcus. If it is a pocket elimination procedure, you are going to raise a full thickness flap and move the entire gingival complex apically. Where if you are doing a flap for increasing the width of attached gingiva or for crown lengthening procedure, you can do a partial thickness for increasing the width of attached gingiva. The partial thickness flap where a periosteum is left intact on the bone, only the gingival connective tissue part is elevated and moved apically and placed over the periosteum and sutured. So the rationale is to eliminate periodontal pocket while preserving the attached gingiva. That is the main idea of this apically displaced flap. An undisplaced flap will not preserve the attached gingiva. If you are giving the incision, you are going to remove the gingival tissue and replacing the remaining tissue there, whereas in apically displaced flap, you are going to move the entire gingival complex apically so that you are going to increase the attached gingiva. Indication: pocket extending to the mucogingival line, buccally erupted canines, clinical crown lengthening for prosthetic treatment to improve gingival and gingival alveolar bone morphology to increase the width of attached gingiva. Advantage of this procedure: there will be minimal pocket depth post-operatively. If optimal soft tissue coverage has been obtained, the post-surgical bone loss is minimal. Preserved attached gingiva and the width of attached gingiva can be increased, preserving the outer portion of the pocket wall and transforming it into the attached gingiva. Establishing gingival morphology, which facilitating good oral hygiene, ensure healthy root surface necessary for the biological width on alveolar margin, and lengthening of clinical crown can be done. These are the advantage of an apically displaced flap, whereas the disadvantages are also there. The disadvantages may be cause aesthetic problem or root hypersensitive problem, because we are going to move the gingival complex apically, so you are going to expose the root surface. Thereby you are going to aesthetically you are going to create recession, or the patient can feel hypersensitive because of the exposure of the root surface. more susceptible to root caries, because we are going to expose the root to the oral cavity. The root surface is more susceptible for root caries, and it is not suitable for severe periodontal diseases, may cause attachment loss to the surgery. Possibility of exposure of the furcation and on roots, which complicate the postoperative supragingival plaque control, very difficult for the patient. So what are all the contraindication for apically displaced flap? Periodontal pocket in severe periodontal disease, periodontal pockets in area where aesthetic is crucial, deep intrabony defects, patients at high risk for caries, patients with high sensitivity or severe hypersensitivity, tooth with marked mobility and severe attachment loss, tooth with extremely unfavorable clinical crown root ratio. These are all the contraindication for doing an apically displaced flap. So coming on to the procedure, an internal bevel incision is made. So the internal bevel incision is almost identical to the incision which we usually give for modified Whitman flap. So the internal bevel incision is given 0.5 to 1 millimeter from the crust of gingival margin and pointed apically to the crust of the alveolar bone. So this is to preserve as much of keratinized and attached gingiva as possible, and they directed to the crust of the bone. So the clavicular incision is the second incision, followed by the internal bevel incision. Then initiate or elevate the flap. The interdental incisions are performed and the wedge of the tissue containing the pocket wall will be removed. The vertical incisions are made extending beyond the mucogingival junction. If your objective is to do a pocket elimination procedure, do a full thickness flap and a blunt dissection with elevating the periosteum along with the flap. If your intention is to do a split thickness flap, then use a BP blade to split the periosteum from the connective tissue and elevate only the connective tissue and leave the periosteum intact on the bone. That is the difference between a partial thickness and full thickness flap in an apically displaced flap. After that, you are going to do scaling root planing. If osseous recontouring is necessary, you have to do the osseous recontouring. If it is a full thickness flap first performed, a sling suture around the tooth prevent the flap from sliding to the position more apical than the desired position. A partial thickness flap is done, then you have to suture the flap along to the periosteum underlying the flap. So you have to suture the flap along to the periosteum also, so that the flap will not get moved from the underlying periosteum. So this is a picture of a apically displaced flap done for pocket reduction. So you can able to see the difference between picture A and picture K. The first and the last picture, how much the flap has been moved apically. Next is the flap incisions for edentulous interproximal regions, either mesial wedge or distal wedge techniques. So pocket exists on mesial and distal of upper molars. The mesial edentulous ridge will have a mesial wedge technique, where the distal will have the distal edge technique. So this technique is almost similar to the distal molar surgeries, where we have seen in the pocket reduction procedures, the distal molar surgery. This is almost similar to the distal molar surgeries, whether a parallel incision or a trapdoor incision is given and the excessive tissue will be removed and the flap is sutured in more apical position so that the pocket is eliminated. That is the idea of doing a distal wedge or mesial wedge technique in edentulous area. This is almost similar to the distal molar surgeries, but the distal molar surgeries is intended to reduce the pocket, whereas these distal wedge and mesial wedge for edentulous ridges are meant to eliminate the pocket. So the osseous surgeries and root planing are followed by the suturing, the flap so that the soft tissue is in close proximity to the bone with post-surgical reduction of pocket depth. Another technique for distal pocket is a trapdoor technique. This again almost similar to our trapdoor technique what we have seen in the last class for distal molar surgeries, whereas here we are not going to remove the tissue. The trapdoor is mainly done for regenerative procedures. If there is a distal crater, you want to fill it with the bone, you can use a graft material to fill that region. The trapdoor will help you to secure the flap in position without any tissue loss. So adequate amount of tissue coverage will be present after the surgery. That is the idea of using a trapdoor on distal pockets. Palatal flaps. Palatal flaps will be different from all the other flaps whatever we have seen till now, because palatal tissue is more thicker and more fibrous. So if you are trying to do something with the palatal tissue, the excessive cut of tissue will not be replaced. If you undercut the tissue, a minimal invasive surgery, then there will be pocket remaining which will not shrink after the surgery. That is the disadvantage of palatal flap. Because of the anatomical characters of the palate, the palatal flaps requires different designs. It is desirable to remove deep palatal periodontal pocket entirely and establish a shallow physiological gingival sulcus for the following reasons. The palatal tissue is a masticating mucosa and it is immobile. It has no elastic fibers and loose connective tissue. Therefore, it is impossible to displace the palatal flap apically. Palatal tissue is thick, keratinized, and therefore accurate close adaptation to the tooth surface and bone margin is difficult. And post-operatively, gingival morphology may be unfavorable. A gingival crater such as thick shelf-shaped that makes the tooth brushing difficult may be created. Such periodontal pockets tend to reoccur postoperatively. Reduction of the periodontal pocket in a thick gingival wall in the palatal aspect is uncommon because of the minimal gingival shrinkage achieved by initial therapy. These are all the problems with the palatal flaps. So the palatal flap design can be of three types: a full thickness flap for thin palatal tissue, a modified partial thickness flap for thick palatal tissue, where the horizontal gingivectomy incision is the initial incision followed by a partial thickness flap with an internal bevel incision, so that you will thin out the flap and suture it back onto the bone. The third type of flap is a partial thickness flap for thicker palatal tissue. So we'll see the advantage of partial thickness flap surgeries on palatal thick. The advantage is the flap thickness may be adjustable, palatal flaps may be adapted to a proper position, better post-operative gingival morphology is possible with a thin flap design. Treatment may be combined either with osseous surgeries or with wedge procedures. Rapid healing, easy management of palatal tissue, minimal damage to the palatal tissue. So the positioning of the primary incision is determined with the following considerations: thickness of the palatal soft tissue, depth of the pocket, necessity for osteoplasty, clinical crown length required for restorative treatment. Primary incision is a partial thickness incision to prepare the thin primary flap. These are all the important things to be noted before you considering a palatal flap. So the picture shows the different techniques. I told you about three techniques, right? Thin internal bevel incision to thin out the thicker palatal flap, or you can give an external bevel incision which is an horizontal incision as a diagram shown in the circle. Give a first incision as an horizontal incision, internal bevel incision, then your internal bevel incision with a partial thickness flap to decrease the thickness of the flap. So the final part is flaps for reconstructive procedures. Again, this is a pocket elimination surgery. In current reconstructive therapy, bone grafts, membranes, or combination of these with or without other agents are used. The flap design should therefore be set up so that the maximum amount of gingival tissue and papilla are retained. For this, we have two procedures. One is the papilla preservation flap and another one is the conventional flap with only clavicular incision. So the flap design of choice is the papilla preservation flap, which retains the entire papilla covering the lesion. However, there must be adequate interdental space to allow the intact papilla to be reflected. If there is no space in the interdental area, then you cannot do a papilla preservation flap. Then you have to go for a conventional flap. If there is a wider interdental space, then you can do a papilla preservation flap. So we'll see what is papilla preservation flap. So the technique for employing a papilla preservation flap is as follows. A clavicular incision is made around each tooth with no incision across the interdental papilla. The preserved papilla can be incorporated into either the facial or to the lingual flap, although it is most often integrated into the facial flap. In these cases, the lingual or palatal incision contains a semilunar incision across the interdental papilla and its palatal or lingual aspect. The incision dip apically from the line angles of the tooth so that the papilla is preserved. The papillary incision is at least 5 mm from the crest of the papilla. An Orban's knife is then introduced into the incision to sever the half or 2/3 of this base of the interdental papilla, and the papilla is moved to the other side. Then debridement will be done. Then the papilla is moved to the same position and sutured back. So you can see an papilla preservation flap where the incision on the palatal aspect is given almost 5 mm away from the crest of the interdental papilla, and the papilla has been reflected onto the buccal flap. After proper cleaning and debridement, the flap is placed back and sutured. Final part is the conventional flap. This is the basic technique where we are going to use only a sulcular incision as the only incision, and we are going to elevate the entire flap. This usually done to preserve as much as the tissue possible so that it can cover up the graft material once you place the graft material. The technique for employing the conventional flap for reconstructive surgery is using a number 12 BB blade, incision of the tissue at the bottom of the pocket to the crest of the bone, splitting the papilla below the contact point. Reflect the flap, maintain as it is thick as possible. The maintenance of the thick flap is necessary to prevent the exposure of the graft material or the membrane. Right? That is the idea of doing a conventional flap. So the entire flap is raised, the graft area is debrided, the defect will be filled with graft and membrane, and the flap is sutured over the graft and membrane. So to summarize, we have seen pocket elimination procedures, basically Widman's flap, undisplaced flap, apically displaced flaps, and flaps for regenerative procedures, flaps for modifications in edentulous area, and distal molar flaps. These are all the flaps which comes for pocket elimination procedures. Right? Thank you.